I'm Dr. Isabella Thorne, and I was a practicing psychiatrist at Crescent Moon Psychiatric Center in Burlington, Vermont for 24 years, or at least I was, until I submitted my resignation 4 months ago. During my career, I've treated over 6,200 patients with every mental health condition imaginable, from severe bipolar disorder to complex trauma-induced dissociation. But what I'm about to tell you is about the one case that made me question everything I thought I knew about memory, identity, and the very fabric of human consciousness itself. Crescent Moon Psychiatric Center sits nestled in the Green Mountains of Vermont, serving as the state's premier facility for treatment-resistant mental health cases. The facility spans 47 acres of pristine Vermont wilderness, with the main building constructed from local granite and timber in 1962. Over the decades, it has grown into a complex of interconnected buildings that house specialized units for every conceivable mental health challenge. For over 2 decades, I specialized in what we call reality disturbance disorders, mental conditions, where patients struggle to distinguish between what's real and what their minds have constructed. As Chief of Women's Mental Health Services, I oversaw a department of 12 psychiatrists, 8 psychologists, and 37 specialized mental health professionals. We handled the cases that other hospitals couldn't manage, the patients whose conditions were so complex that they required months or even years of intensive treatment. My journey to this position began at Harvard Medical School, where I graduated summa cum laude in 1999. I completed my psychiatric residency at McLean Hospital, one of the most prestigious psychiatric facilities in the world, where I trained under Dr. Margaret Chen, a pioneer in dissociative disorder treatment. Following residency, I pursued a fellowship in trauma psychiatry at the University of Pennsylvania, focusing specifically on memory-related disorders. I hold board certifications in general psychiatry, trauma therapy, and forensic psychology. Over my career, I've published 23 peer-reviewed papers on memory disorders, with particular focus on the neurobiological mechanisms that govern memory formation and retrieval. My research on false memory syndrome earned recognition from the American Psychiatric Association, and I've served as an expert witness in over 40 legal cases involving recovered memories and psychological manipulation. From 2018 to 2023, I worked as a consultant for the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, helping agents understand how psychological manipulation could be used to implant false memories in victims of elaborate crimes. This work exposed me to the darkest corners of human psychology and taught me to recognize even the most sophisticated attempts at memory manipulation and reality distortion. Throughout my career, I've encountered every variation of human psychological complexity. I've treated combat veterans whose minds fractured under the weight of unimaginable trauma, creating elaborate internal worlds where they could process experiences too horrific for conscious acceptance. I've worked with survivors of childhood abuse who developed dissociative identity disorder as a survival mechanism, their consciousness fracturing into multiple personalities to compartmentalize unbearable pain. I've guided patients through recovered memory therapy, helping them carefully distinguish between genuine traumatic memories and the false memories that sometimes emerge during intensive psychological work. I've seen how the mind protects itself by constructing alternate realities, and I've learned to identify the subtle markers that distinguish authentic memories from psychological fabrications. In my professional experience, I've developed what I believe to be an infallible ability to distinguish between genuine memories and fabricated ones. Real memories have a particular quality. They're inconsistent in their clarity. Certain details remain vivid, while others fade, and they're often accompanied by seemingly unrelated sensory fragments that are actually neurologically connected through the complex web of memory formation. False memories, whether created through therapeutic suggestion, psychological trauma, or pathological conditions, typically lack this organic complexity. They're often too perfect, too emotionally convenient, or too thematically consistent. The mind that constructs false memories tends to create narratives that serve a psychological purpose, filling gaps in identity or providing explanations for unexplained emotional states. I had developed standardized protocols for evaluating memory authenticity, combining neuropsychological testing with detailed biographical verification. My success rate was remarkable. I could typically identify false or constructed memories within the first few sessions, allowing us to redirect treatment toward addressing the underlying psychological needs that had created the false narrative. I thought I had mapped every corner of human consciousness, understood every mechanism by which the mind could deceive itself, and mastered every technique for distinguishing reality from fabrication. I was catastrophically, fundamentally wrong. Vermont's autumn of 2023 was particularly stunning, with maple leaves creating a tapestry of gold and crimson across the mountains surrounding our facility. The grounds of Crescent Moon were legendary among patients and staff alike. Mican paths wound through old-growth forest, connecting meditation gardens with therapeutic outdoor spaces designed to promote healing and reflection. Our main building housed the administrative offices and 4 specialized treatment units. The acute psychiatric unit handled patients in crisis, requiring 24-hour supervision and intensive medication management. The stabilization unit provided intermediate care for patients transitioning from acute crisis to longer-term treatment. Our trauma recovery unit specialized in treating complex PTSD and dissociative disorders, using cutting-edge techniques like EMDR and somatic experiencing therapy. But the crown jewel of our facility was the Memory Integration Wardus, a specialized 20-bed unit that I had personally designed and established in 2019. This unit was dedicated exclusively to treating patients struggling with severe memory-related disorders, dissociative amnesia, false memory syndrome, and complex cases where the line between real and imagined experiences had become completely blurred. The Memory Integration Ward featured state-of-the-art neuroimaging equipment, including a dedicated MRI machine specifically calibrated for detailed brain mapping during memory recall exercises. We had specialized therapy rooms equipped with virtual reality systems that could recreate environments to help patients safely explore potentially traumatic memories. Our medication management protocols were the most advanced in New England, utilizing genetic testing to optimize psychiatric medications for individual patients. My team was exceptional, handpicked from the most prestigious programs across the country. Dr. Rajesh Patel, my colleague in neuropsychology, had trained at Stanford under Dr. Daniel Schachter, one of the world's leading memory researchers. Rajesh possessed an almost supernatural ability to map the intricate pathways of human memory formation and retrieval. His dissertation research on the neurobiological differences between true and false memories had been groundbreaking, establishing new protocols for distinguishing genuine recall from constructed narratives. Our head nurse, Margaret Blackwood, had 28 years of psychiatric nursing experience, including a decade working in maximum security forensic psychiatric facilities. Margaret could read a patient's mental state with a single glance, identifying signs of decompensation or breakthrough moments that less experienced staff might miss. She had an intuitive understanding of human psychology that complemented our more scientific approaches. Dr. Elena Vasquez, our trauma specialist, had developed innovative techniques for helping patients process recovered memories safely. Elena had trained at the Menninger Clinic and specialized in cases where severe trauma had fragmented memory formation. Her protocols for memory integration therapy had been adopted by psychiatric facilities across North America. Dr. Marcus Webb, our forensic psychiatrist, brought expertise in cases involving legal implications of memory disorders. Many of our patients had been involved in criminal cases where the accuracy of their memories was crucial to legal proceedings. Marcus had testified as an expert witness in over 200 cases, helping courts understand the complex relationship between trauma, memory, and legal culpability. Patricia Hughes, our lead social worker, had an exceptional talent for investigation and verification. Before joining our team, Patricia had worked for the Department of Social Services, investigating complex family situations where memory and reality often became entangled. Her ability to research and verify biographical details was legendary. If a fact could be documented, Patricia could find it. Our approach was methodical, evidence-based, and comprehensive. We combined cognitive behavioral therapy with EMDR, dialectical behavior therapy, and medication management when appropriate. We used extensive psychological testing, including the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, the Dissociative Experiences Scale, and specialized memory authenticity assessments that I had developed over years of research. Our success rate with complex cases was remarkable. 78% of patients showed significant improvement within 6 months, and 65% achieved full remission of symptoms within 1 year. We had successfully treated cases that other facilities had given up on, helping patients rebuild their relationship with reality and develop healthy coping mechanisms for managing their conditions. We prided ourselves on being able to help even the most fractured minds reconstruct their sense of reality through careful, compassionate therapeutic intervention. Our motto, painted in elegant script above the main entrance, read: truth emerges through compassionate inquiry. We believed that with enough skill, patience, and scientific rigor, any delusion could be unraveled, any false memory could be identified and gently corrected, any break from reality could be mended through proper treatment. The case that would shatter this confidence and change my understanding of human consciousness forever arrived on a crisp Thursday morning in October, carried through our doors by 2 confused police officers who had no idea they were delivering the first piece of a puzzle that would ultimately destroy everything I thought I knew about the nature of memory and reality. The call came at 6:47 a.m. on October 19th, 2023. I was in my office early, as was my habit, reviewing patient charts while watching the sunrise paint the mountains in soft pastels of pink and gold. The emergency line's sharp ring cut through the peaceful morning silence, immediately putting me on alert. Emergency calls at this hour typically meant someone was in crisis. Detective Maria Santos, from the Burlington Police Department, was on the other end, her voice tight with a mixture of frustration and bewilderment that I'd learned to recognize over years of working with law enforcement. Police officers were trained to deal with clear-cut situations, their trends with perpetrators, problems with solutions. Mental health cases often left them feeling helpless and confused. Dr. Thorne, we've got a situation that's, well, it's unusual, even for us. We found a woman about 2 hours ago, sitting on a bench outside the Champlain Valley Exposition. She's not violent, not threatening, not obviously intoxicated. She's just sitting there, very calmly, insisting she needs to get home to her family. I glanced at our admission schedule displayed on my computer monitor. We had 2 open beds in the acute unit, and 1 in stabilization. What makes you think this is psychiatric, rather than just someone who's lost or disoriented? Detective Santos paused, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. Well, that's the thing, Dr. Thorne. She's not lost. Exactly. She knows exactly who she is and where she lives. She can give us detailed directions to her house, her husband's full name, her children's birthdays, even her social security number. She's completely coherent and articulate. But here's the problem, none of it checks out. It's like she's describing a life that doesn't exist. This wasn't entirely unusual. We occasionally saw patients who had constructed elaborate false identities as a way of coping with trauma or severe mental illness. Sometimes these constructions were so detailed and internally consistent that patients genuinely believed them to be true. The treatment typically involved gentle reality testing combined with therapy to address the underlying psychological needs that had created the false narrative. Has she been reported missing? Any family looking for her? That's another strange thing. We ran her description through missing persons databases for Vermont and neighboring states. Nothing. No one matching her description has been reported missing. And Dr. Thorne, she's well-dressed, well-groomed, obviously educated. This isn't some homeless person with untreated schizophrenia. She looks like she just stepped out of a business meeting. I made a note on my admission pad. Well-dressed, coherent patients with elaborate false identities often had complex underlying conditions that required careful evaluation. What name is she giving you? Aria Nightingale. She says she lives in a town called Millhaven, Vermont, with her husband Tobias and their 11-year-old daughter Celeste. She owns a bed and breakfast called the Crimson Maple Inn. She's genuinely worried about getting home because her daughter has a piano recital tomorrow night. I felt the first flutter of professional interest. The specificity of the details was notable. Most patients with false identity construction kept their stories relatively vague to avoid inconsistencies. Someone who could provide specific addresses, business names, and scheduled events was either exceptionally sophisticated in their delusion or genuinely confused about their identity. We'll have a bed ready for her. How is she handling the transport? She's being very cooperative. She keeps asking us to call her husband to let him know where she is. But Detective Santos's voice trailed off. But you can't verify that he exists. Exactly, Dr. Thorne. In 23 years of police work, I've never encountered anything quite like this. She's not exhibiting any signs of mental illness that I can recognize, but she's describing a life that we can't document anywhere. 20 minutes later, they brought her in through our secure entrance. Aria Nightingale was a striking woman who appeared to be in her early 30s, with auburn hair that caught the morning light streaming through our lobby windows, and remarkable green eyes that seemed to hold depths of experience and intelligence. She was impeccably dressed in a burgundy wool coat over what appeared to be a high-quality silk blouse and well-tailored slacks. Her leather handbag was expensive but not ostentatious, and she wore minimal jewelry, just a wedding ring and small pearl earrings. If I had encountered her in a coffee shop or professional conference, I would have assumed she was a successful businesswoman, perhaps a lawyer or marketing executive, heading to an important meeting. There was nothing in her appearance or demeanor to suggest mental illness, homelessness, or any of the typical presentations we associated with psychiatric emergencies. Dr. Thorne, she said as I introduced myself, extending a well-manicured hand for a firm handshake. Thank goodness you're here. I think there's been some kind of terrible mistake. I really need to get home to Millhaven. My husband Tobias will be worried sick. I never stay out all night without calling. He's probably already contacted the police there. Her voice was cultured and articulate, with just a trace of what sounded like a New England accent. There was no slurring, no rapid speech, no signs of mania or psychosis. Her concern seemed genuine and appropriate, exactly what you'd expect from a devoted wife and mother who found herself unexpectedly separated from her family. And my daughter Celeste has her piano recital tomorrow evening at the Millhaven Community Center, she continued, her voice taking on the slightly anxious tone of a parent facing the possibility of missing an important milestone. She's been practicing Chopin's Minute Waltz for months. I promised I'd be there, and I never break promises to Celeste. She's probably wondering where I am right now. As she spoke, I observed her body language and facial expressions with the trained eye of someone who had evaluated thousands of patients. Her emotional responses appeared completely authentic. The slight tightening around her eyes when she mentioned her worried husband, the way her voice softened with maternal affection when talking about her daughter. These weren't the performative emotions of someone constructing a false narrative. They were the genuine reactions of a loving wife and mother genuinely concerned about her family. I escorted Aria to my office, a space I had carefully designed to promote calm and openness. Large windows overlooked the mountains, comfortable seating arrangements encouraged relaxed conversation, and soft lighting created an atmosphere that helped even the most anxious patients feel at ease. My degrees and certifications hung on one wall, not as displays of ego, but as reassurance to patients that they were in qualified hands. During our initial interview, Arya spoke with remarkable clarity and consistency about what appeared to be a completely fabricated life. But the level of detail was extraordinary, far beyond anything I had encountered in cases of false memory construction or elaborate delusion. Our inn, the Crimson Maple Inn, has been in Tobias's family for 3 generations, she began, settling comfortably into the leather chair across from my desk. His great-grandfather Samuel Nightingale built the original structure in 1897 as a private residence. It's a beautiful Victorian, painted yellow with white trim, and a wraparound porch that faces south to catch the morning sun. She paused, her eyes taking on the distant look of someone accessing cherished memories. The house sits on Elm Street. It's the only yellow Victorian on the block, so you really can't miss it. Samuel was a master craftsman, and the house features hand-carved woodwork throughout. The main staircase has a beautiful walnut banister that Samuel carved himself, with intricate vine patterns that took him nearly 6 months to complete. The specificity was remarkable. Most patients with false memory construction kept their stories relatively general to avoid inconsistencies that might expose their fabrication, but Arya was providing architectural details, family history, and geographical information with the confidence of someone describing their actual home. When Tobias and I got married in 2009, the house had been sitting empty for almost 10 years. Tobias's grandfather had passed away, and the family couldn't decide what to do with the property. It needed extensive renovation, the plumbing was ancient, the electrical system hadn't been updated since the 1940s, and some of the roof tiles had come loose during a bad storm the previous winter. She smiled with the satisfaction of someone recounting a successful project. We spent our first 2 years of marriage basically rebuilding the entire house. Tobias has a degree in historical architecture from UVM, so he knew how to preserve the original character while modernizing the infrastructure. I handled the interior design and business planning. We opened as a bed and breakfast in June 2012 with our first guest, Mrs. Eleanor Walsh from Hartford, Connecticut. I made notes as she spoke, documenting the incredible level of detail. This wasn't the vague storytelling typical of confabulation, nor was it the grandiose fantasy often seen in certain personality disorders. Arya was describing mundane, practical details, renovation challenges, business planning, specific dates and names, with the kind of matter-of-fact tone that comes from lived experience. We have 7 guest rooms, each named after a different tree species native to Vermont, she continued. The oak room has the clawfoot bathtub that guests always request for romantic getaways. The birch room has the best view of Mount Equinox in the distance. You can see it perfectly from the window seat that Tobias built into the bay window. The maple room is our largest, with a king-size bed and a working fireplace that we only light for special occasions because the chimney needs professional cleaning. When I asked about her daily routine, Arya's description had the mundane authenticity that's almost impossible to fabricate convincingly. I usually wake up at 5:30 to start breakfast preparations. We serve a full Vermont breakfast to a maple syrup, of course, eggs from Henderson's farm just outside town, and I bake fresh scones every morning. Guests have come to expect them, and we've built quite a reputation. I make different flavors depending on the season, cranberry orange in the fall, blueberry lemon in summer. She laughed softly. Yesterday morning, or at least, what feels like yesterday, I made cinnamon apple scones because Mrs. Patterson from Boston specifically requested them when she made her reservation for this week. She stays with us every October to see the full foliage, and she's become like family. Her late husband used to love my cinnamon apple recipe. The emotional texture of these memories was what struck me most powerfully. Arya wasn't reciting facts, she was sharing experiences rich with personal meaning and interpersonal connection. The way she spoke about Mrs. Patterson contained genuine warmth and familiarity. the tone you'd use when describing a beloved regular customer who had become a friend. Tobias handles most of the evening check-ins because he's naturally more social than I am, she continued. He loves hearing guest stories about where they're from and what brought them to Vermont. I prefer the quiet morning routines. There's something peaceful about having the kitchen to myself while the house is still sleeping, kneading dough and watching the sun come up over the mountains. That's when I asked about her daughter. Aria's entire demeanor transformed with unmistakable maternal love and pride. Celeste is 11, and she's the light of our lives, she said, her voice softening to the tender tone that parents use when describing their children. She's been taking piano lessons with Mrs. Chen for 3 years now. Mrs. Chen is probably 75, but her fingers are still incredibly nimble. She trained at the New England Conservatory decades ago and moved to Vermont when she retired from professional performance. Aria reached into her purse and pulled out what appeared to be a small photograph, though when I looked more closely, it was just a blank piece of paper. She stared at it with the expression of a mother gazing at her child's picture, completely unaware that she was looking at nothing. Celeste has been working on Chopin's Minute Waltz for tomorrow night's recital. It's technically challenging for someone her age, but Mrs. Chen believes in pushing her students. Celeste practices every evening after homework. We can hear her from downstairs in the inn's common areas. Some guests have commented on how lovely it sounds drifting through the house. Her eyes filled with tears as she continued. She gets this look of complete concentration when she plays difficult passages, her tongue sticking out slightly at the corner of her mouth, the way children do when they're focusing intensely. And when she finally masters a tricky section, her whole face lights up with joy. Tobias jokes that we hear the waltz in our sleep, but I love every repetition because I can hear her improvement. The emotional authenticity was overwhelming and deeply unsettling. This wasn't the detached recitation of someone constructing a fantasy, nor was it the theatrical emotion of someone performing for an audience. Aria exhibited the unconscious confidence and genuine effect of someone describing their real family, their actual daily life, their authentic experiences and relationships. As a matter of routine protocol, I had Patricia Hughes, our lead social worker and investigation specialist, begin verifying Aria's background while I continued the clinical interview. Patricia was renowned for her ability to research and document even the most obscure biographical details. If a person existed in any official capacity, Patricia could find evidence of their existence. Within 90 minutes, Patricia appeared at my office door with an expression I had never seen before in our years of working together. She looked genuinely disturbed and confused in emotions that were completely foreign to someone who had investigated thousands of complex cases over her career. Dr. Thorne, we have a significant problem, she said, closing the door behind her and taking a seat across from my desk. There is no Millhaven, Vermont. I've checked state records, census data going back to 1790, post office databases, historical archives, tourism boards, and even geological surveys. No town by that name has ever existed anywhere in Vermont. Patricia consulted her tablet, scrolling through multiple database searches. Nothing anywhere. No business license in Vermont or any other state. No tax records. No workers' compensation filings. No listing with the Vermont Tourism Board or the New England Inn Association. I even contacted the Secretary of State's office directly. There are no incorporation records for any business called the Crimson Maple Inn anywhere in New England. No marriage certificate anywhere in Vermont or in any other state database I can access. No record of a Tobias Nightingale anywhere. No birth certificate. No social security number. No driver's license. No passport. No tax filings. No employment records. It's like he never existed. The scope of the fabrication was becoming clear, but there was something different about this case that was beginning to trouble me deeply. Most patients with false identity construction created stories that were internally consistent but deliberately vague about verifiable details. They avoided specifics that could be easily checked and disproven. but Aria was providing extraordinarily specific information, names, addresses, dates, professional relationships, that should have been easily verifiable if genuine, and were definitely disprovable if false. I understand, but I want to be absolutely thorough. Sometimes patients with false memories provide details that correspond to real locations, even if their personal connection to those places is fabricated. Patricia consulted her notes. There is no covered bridge where she described it. Beaver Brook does exist, but it's crossed by a modern concrete bridge that was built in 1987, and Mill Hollow Road doesn't exist anywhere in that area. I spent an extra hour driving every back road within a 20-mile radius. The whole region is exactly what I expected: forest, a few scattered farms, and no evidence that any town has ever existed there. This was becoming more than a routine case of false memory construction. The level of specific verifiable detail that Aria was providing, combined with the complete absence of any documentary evidence for her claimed life, was unprecedented in my experience. None of them had encountered anything quite like Aria's presentation. Dr. Harrison suggested the possibility of cryptomnesia, a condition where someone unconsciously incorporates information they've previously encountered into their personal memories, believing these borrowed details to be their own experiences. But Aria's memories were far too detailed, personal, and emotionally consistent to be borrowed from external sources like books, movies, or other people's stories. The following morning, I ordered the most comprehensive psychiatric and neurological evaluation in our facility's capabilities. If Aria's condition had any biological basis, we needed to identify it. If her presentation was psychological, we needed to understand the underlying mechanisms that were creating such an elaborate and convincing false reality. Dr. Rajesh Patel conducted extensive cognitive and neuropsychological testing while I performed detailed psychological assessments using every validated instrument at our disposal. The results were as baffling as they were conclusive. Her cognitive function scores were remarkable. She tested in the 95th percentile for verbal intelligence, the 92nd percentile for visual spatial processing, and the 96th percentile for executive function. She displayed no signs of confusion, disorientation, or impaired thinking. Her attention span was excellent, her reasoning abilities were superior, and her memory function for everything except her apparently fictional life was exceptionally good. The psychological testing was equally puzzling. Aria's Minnesota multiphasic personality inventory results were completely within normal ranges across all scales. She showed no indicators of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, or any personality disorder that might predispose someone to creating elaborate false identities. Dr. Elena Vasquez conducted specialized trauma assessments using validated instruments designed to detect both recent and historical psychological trauma. The results were consistently negative. Isabella, there's no indication of repressed traumatic memories breaking through into consciousness, no signs of childhood abuse that might have fractured her sense of reality, and no evidence of recent psychological trauma that might have triggered an elaborate defensive fantasy. Dr. Thorne, Margaret said during our weekly staffing meeting, I've seen every type of delusion, fantasy construction, and false memory presentation you can imagine over my career. This woman is different. She's not showing any of the behavioral markers I associate with psychiatric conditions. She's genuinely confused and concerned about why we can't verify her life, but she's not exhibiting signs of mental illness. Margaret's intuitive assessments had proven accurate in countless cases over the years. Her ability to distinguish between genuine psychological disturbance and normal emotional responses was legendary among our staff. The blood work and toxicology screens came back completely clean. No drugs, no alcohol, no medications that might cause confusion, memory problems, or alterations in consciousness. Aria's physical health was excellent, with no indication of medical conditions that might affect cognitive function. Dr. Marcus Webb, our forensic psychiatrist, evaluated Aria specifically for signs of malingering or intentional deception. Forensic assessment techniques are designed to detect even sophisticated attempts to fake psychiatric symptoms or construct false narratives for secondary gain. Isabella, I've used every validated technique for detecting deception and malingering, Marcus reported after completing his evaluation. Aria shows no signs of performance inconsistency, no evidence of exaggerated or manufactured symptoms, and no indication that she's consciously constructing a false narrative. If she's deceiving us, she's doing it at a level of sophistication that's beyond anything I've encountered in forensic practice. What made Aria's case most profoundly disturbing was the overwhelming emotional authenticity of her impossible memories. During our daily sessions, when she spoke about her husband and daughter, her love was palpable, genuine, and deeply moving. This wasn't the shallow effect of someone role-playing, the grandiose fantasy of someone seeking attention, or the detached recitation of someone constructing a protective delusion. On our fourth day together, I decided to explore her memories in greater depth, hoping to find some inconsistency or gap that might provide insight into the psychological mechanisms creating her condition. Aria, tell me about how you and Tobias met. Take me through that experience in as much detail as you can remember. Her face immediately transformed with the kind of nostalgic warmth and genuine affection that accompanies treasured memories. Her posture relaxed, her voice took on a softer tone, and her eyes acquired the distant focus of someone accessing deeply meaningful experiences. We met during our junior year at the University of Vermont. I was majoring in hospitality management with a minor in business administration, and Tobias was studying architectural history with a specialization in New England preservation techniques. It was late October, probably around this time of year, and the campus was absolutely gorgeous with fall colors. She paused, touching her wedding ring, a simple gold band that showed genuine wear patterns from years of daily wearing. The ring appeared authentic, with the kind of microscopic scratches and slight warping that comes from constant use over many years. I was in Bailey Howe Library researching Victorian-era in-management practices for a term paper. I had checked out probably 15 books on hospitality history, tourism development, and historic preservation. The books were heavy, and I was trying to balance them while navigating between the stacks. Aria laughed with genuine embarrassment, the kind of self-deprecating humor that accompanies 3 days later. Devon Cross arrived, another impossible case. A 35-year-old engineer, with perfect memories of working at Tesla's Burlington facility. Problem: Tesla had no Burlington operations. His memories included detailed technical specifications, co-worker names, even his employee ID number, all unverifiable. Then came Sarah Mitchell, remembering her veterinary practice in fictional Riverside, Vermont. Marcus Thompson recalled teaching at the non-existent Millfield Academy. Each case followed the same pattern: extraordinarily detailed memories, genuine emotions, zero documentation. Within 2 months, I had documented 17 cases. All patients remembered lives in Vermont towns that didn't exist. All shared one disturbing detail: they felt disconnected from their families, as if separated by an invisible barrier. The medical board accused me of falsifying records. Colleagues questioned my sanity. When I published my findings suggesting consciousness might exist beyond individual brains, my license was suspended. I resigned before they could revoke it permanently. The patients were transferred to other facilities, labeled as treatment-resistant delusional disorder cases. But I know what I witnessed. 17 people with impossible memories, shared sensory experiences, and genuine grief for lives that officially never existed. Sometimes consciousness operates beyond our understanding. Memory, it seems, doesn't always follow the rules we think govern reality.